Good evening, everyone. How are we all doing? I'm just going to try and make a little bit of extra wall here. I need to make a miter join. Just trying to think about the angle. It's the other way around I want. Don't be shy and say hello if you're there. That's the bit I don't want. This is the bit I do. I just lost temporarily. Now I need to get those corners married up. Howdy, Grumpy Greg. How are you doing, my friend? I just need to apply some super glue with a cocktail stick because it's very difficult to get to. Good evening, Robert. Thank you for joining me over here. And now, if I can get the angle right, I just need to marry these two together on the corner. Without sticking my fingers to it. Snowy day in upstate New York. I was about to ask what part of the world you were from. It's not snowing here, but it's very, very cold. I think in parts of the UK it's forecast to snow, but I've just looked at our sort of long-term, well, not long-term, our forecast for the next 24 hours, and it's clear and cold. But we're very mild in the UK weather-wise, so we don't tend to get a lot of snow. It's usually very, very wet, if anything. But we do cold quite well. Although it's not as cold as it gets in New York, by the sounds of things. So does that mean it's just about past midday where you are? So you've got 5 hours where you are? 5 hours difference, I think. What I'm making here is a little bit of like a cover for some, for a bit of wall that's not quite as good as I'd like it to be. So rather than rip it all out, I'm just going to clad it. That will then, like I say, it will just sit over that corner there. It's not easy to get hold of without a pair of tweezers to handle. I think it just requires a little blast of activator spray at the back there just to oh, I see. Yeah, it gets quite cold up there, doesn't it? I must admit my my Great Lakes geography is not that great. I always thought that was is Lake Erie the one that connects you to Canada? I suppose sort of up Niagara Falls kind of area. These are still covered in the bits of fibre from last night's tree. I think if we tend to get snow, it's well, it's we tend to get icy currents coming up down from Scandinavia, but it's not that often. I just want to make sure I don't saturate this with glue, otherwise it's going to end up running out the sides. Just going to try and hold that there. That's going to pull in that bit of wall to the window, and it has done. That's great. So what I ended up having to do was just recut these little inner sections because the brickwork wasn't up to scratch. Or what had happened was actually that I've lost my set screw. I had it a minute ago. The brickwork that I'd cut was a bit too shallow, so when it came to painting it, it covered in most of the detail, and it got to the point where I couldn't rescue it, so I've had to reclad it. So I cut some more brick the other night, and I've started remedying that area. Almost 3. Okay, so what is that? It's nearly 8 here, so yeah, we're 5 hours difference, aren't we? I've lost where my marker was. There we are, found it again. That will now fit in there, lovely. I just have to paint the top of it again. We've got a bit of a telltale white mark there. But once I've painted it, it'll blend in, and you won't be able to tell. Just got to find the relevant colour. That's not the right paintbrush. There we go. Make sure I don't dip that into my tea. That's a common modelling mistake. You mistake your tea water for your brush water. Teacup for brush water. That bit just needs to be chiselled off, I think. And that white seam is going to be hidden by another bit of brick wall. So we don't need to worry about that for the moment. I'm going to just... Oops, that's not the right pot. It wasn't my tea this time, so don't worry. So I think now that I've got that wall sorted around there, I can glue it back into place. Because I've been delaying putting this down in place until I've sorted this section out. I've just got a bit of... There we go. It's run off a little. So now I'll just apply some glue around the edges. And this is now going to finally fix in place. Let's hope I can do this first time, otherwise I will end up getting it in the wrong place. There we go. While I'm at it, I'm just going to get this fence glued in. A little bit of activator spray to speed up the process. Sorry, lots and lots of crackling and popping noises in the background. That's just me going to open up a tub. Now there's a lot of white showing around the edge of the model there. That needs to be hidden with some strategically placed excuse me, some strategically placed gravel. And for that I'm going to need a little bit of a glue bed. With some PVA glue that refuses to exit the bottle. Unfortunately, I've only got like an industrial sized tub of this stuff that's nearing the bottom, so it's not that easy to dispense. What I really need now is an older brush to try and smooth this in place. I've got loads of old brushes. Just finding one that's going to be suitable. See, look, that one's absolutely ruined, but it might just be good enough to get the glue in. Oh, they're saying that the bristles are too far apart to be able to accurately get the glue in. So I'm just going to go ahead and use a slightly less damaged brush, but one that's got better bristles. I'm just going to paint some PVA into that gap. If I get some on the pathway here, I can just wipe it off afterwards. It's not that bad, which is why it's actually better using this than super glue. Now obviously, in hindsight, masking it would have been a much better solution too, to avoid having to clean up. So before I go much further, I'll just run a piece of tape across that paving area just to help me out. little bit of overkill here. I pulled far too much tape out. Better to be safe than sorry, though. That might make it a little bit easier to drop in. And yeah, I probably could have masked the bottom of the house as well. This is kind of like an initial layer, because what I'm going to do is glue the gravel down first, and then I'll put some watered down PVA on top of it to seal it all in place. So this is just like a two-stage gluing. It'll have a thorough gluing down afterwards, but this is just to help hold it all in place. That old brush will come in useful there. Just get a bit more better light on the subject. Can't remember the other side. The other side was just embedded in with a bit of dirt. So that's enough glue. What you need to do now is try and get us some gravel in place. That's a little bit of rogue string from the tree that I made last night. Okay, so what I've got is a tub full of real granite chippings. This is actually model railway ballast. It's a little bit on the big side for this, but it should work well enough. I just now need a small implement to help me put it in. Found a little spatula. Now with a small paintbrush I should be able to brush up those little gravel chippings and shepherd them in. Around the corner there. It's very, very much like applying railway ballast. It just takes a long time to just level it off and brush it into the areas that you want it. So I'm just going to need a little bit more just for that section here, because I haven't quite got enough from brushing elsewhere. Thank you, Rabbi. Good evening or good afternoon, depending on what part of the world you're in. Evening. Good evening then. So I don't know if you guys are finding me for the first time or you're subscribers to the channel, but apart from giving out modelling tips, I actually specialise in making miniature versions of people's actual houses. So this is a commission piece for a client down in London who wanted a recreation of her house in 150 scale with a full interior. And I've been delaying planting or gluing down the house onto its base for a while. I don't really know why, but finally got round to it. Day's going really well, thank you. I'm just home alone for a little while, which always lets me get stuff done. I'm just making the most of some quiet time to try and get cracking with this. I'm going to have to end up buying some actual isopropyl alcohol. I've been living off the vat I've had for years, and it's getting towards the bottom now. So what I need to do now to put this gravel down is I'm just going to squirt on with a little kind of syringe device thing some isopropyl alcohol. And what this does is reduces the surface tension on the gravel and allows me to squeeze some watered down PVA onto it. So if I wasn't to do this step, then the glue would just sit on top and pool, and you just end up with a big blob of glue sat on top of it. Ah, very good. Glad you found me. So yes, I make full house models with dioramas. In fact, if I just spin round, say hello to the dog, that's the house that you'll have just found. So that's one with a full diorama with hedgerows. So this is the sponge hedge that you may well have seen. And that's the top part of this current house that I'm building. So yes, that's my demonstration model. I use that to show my sort of range, as it were. But just recently, I've been adding to it and displaying or demonstrating different methods of making various scenic items. So that's how you found me, isn't it? I'm just trying to clear off the end of this nozzle because it's become seized up. That's what tends to happen with PVA, whether it's watered down or not. So yes, I made that a number of years ago just to sort of push my skills and see how far I could go with a detailed model of a house. Because what I started off doing was making models for model railways, so little things like stations and signal boxes. I just wanted, when I was a bit at a loose end, I just wanted to make a model to show how far I could push my skills. And then back down when we were in the COVID lockdown, I was at a very, very loose end. So I just happened to share that photograph on social media and sort of sent it out with a message asking if anybody would like a model of their house building. And that's kind of where I went into business as a professional model maker. So now when I'm not doing my day job or making tutorials on YouTube, I am building models of people's actual houses, which is good fun. I've got rather a large waiting list at the moment, which I'm just working my way through. This one has got to be the start of December, or the first week in December, so I really need to get moving. I have been working on another video for the channel that will, if I manage to find the time, that will be going live sometime Friday. That's going to be on how to make a better pine tree. I don't know if you've seen the pine tree made out of string video that I put up last weekend. That was more of an experiment than anything, just to see if it was possible to use a piece of garden twine to make a whole tree, or make the whole parts of the tree. So that's how we ended up getting the trunk, etc. Now what I've got is a little bit of grout, my own homemade mix for dirt and grout, sort of garden, ground. Except I'm running out, so I've got a very low stock. I'm having to sort of squeeze out what I've got. And I'm just going to fill that small gap between the base and the wall with what I've got left of this this mix. I'll just show you the tub. This is all that's left. I really need to make some more. But what I do is I get some soil from the garden and dry it out. It's always better to leave it to dry naturally for a while. But after you've left it to dry naturally, you can then put it on a baking tray in the oven with some coloured grout powder. So this is the remnants of this is it's mostly the grout powder that's left. Mix it all up with some coloured grout powder and bake it in the oven. Now I've got that process wrong. Dry out your soil first. Dry out your soil first in the oven, and that does two things. It dries it out and it also kills any bacteria that's that might be still lurking. And once you've got some nice lovely dry soil, you can then sieve that out to get the finer particles. So the bigger bits of stone, etc., that you might have left, you can put those to a side to use as actual stones. And in the finer soil, you mix with some, like I say, some coloured grout powder, the sort of stuff that you use to mix up tiling grout to put your tiles on. And then give it a good mix up and you've got like instant ground cover. You subbed after the trees. You see, I'm always trying to sort of I use a lot of off-the-shelf solutions because that's what they're designed for, but I do like to try and find some cheaper homemade options, because not everybody can afford to if they're doing it as a hobby, not as a job, then you can't afford to buy the premium materials all the time. So it's always good to find alternatives. There are other sort of videos and resources that show you how to make sort of your own sort of homemade versions of things, but it doesn't hurt to share ideas in a different way. I always like to try and push an idea I've found somewhere else and put my own little twist on it. So the idea with the tea bags, I mean, a lot of people use ground tea leaves for for making ground cover, a bit like this, you know, like gravel and stuff. Yes, real tea leaves are much better because they resemble leaves, because they're a bit of a better product, aren't they, really? But we tend to get tea bags, so I wasn't going to go and buy a bag of loose tea leaves especially for the project. Although I was tempted the other day when I went to the store and I saw a box of loose tea leaves. Thought, do you know what, I might try those, but it'd be just using them for the sake of it. But I am interested to find out what exactly they look like in terms of you know, in terms of how realistic they look, because even if you just buy a pack of tea leaves just for the sake of it, it's still got to be cheaper than buying model leaves. Like I said, I'm just running this gravel around the base. So the idea when you make a house model, or not the idea, but the big thing sometimes when people make house models or models of buildings, there's always a visible seam between the sort of box of the house and the ground. And one great way of adding that extra bit of realism is to disguise that join. I mean, another way of doing it is making your building taller than floor level, so you can literally sink it into the ground and then build your ground level up to it. I'll do the same thing again now. I'm just going to wash some alcohol onto there, because again, this is the same sort of thing. It's a dry material that's quite porous, so therefore when you squeeze glue onto it, it'll just run off like beads, like water on a window. And by squeezing some alcohol onto it, reduces that surface tension so it doesn't bead, and it will in fact soak into the gravel. So all that gravel around the other side now, because it's quite deep, that as well, so once it's all soaked in and dried, that will be rock solid and will stay put. Please excuse me, I think I've got the beginnings of a cough coming. So again, I just need to dribble a little bit of glue onto there. This will probably have a little bit of paint applied. That's easier said than done. I think I've got not very much left. So it just needs a little bit of water adding to it to thin it down a bit. So yes, this won't be the final colour on this side. It'll just be, I'll just paint it up a bit. But the texture will be there ready. I think we've gunged up as well. We've gunked up again. I can perhaps run a little bit of dark wash over this to colour it. So this property, the board that I'm using, the base that this is sat on, actually represents the full extent of this property. It's not, because it's central London. Oops, I've run out of power. Because it's central London, the space is at a premium, and there wasn't an awful lot of space when this house was built. So they kind of squeezed as much they could into the area available. Right, so that's all glued in. Just need to wait for that to dry now, I guess. I need to tidy this up a bit now, because when I was touching the brickwork up, I lost, so I ended up with a bit of paint covering this little bit of capping here. I must have got this cover with a little bit of super glue, because the bristles are a little bit crisp. Which is what tends to happen when you're a little bit hasty with brush application. You try and paint too soon after you've super glued, then you end up ruining your brush inadvertently. Good evening, Moneybrook Junction. Thank you very much for joining. And hello to Lisa as well. I usually live stream on the other platform, the other video platform. But I must admit, I'm falling out of love with that place now. So although I've got like 35,000 followers on the other place, it's it's a strange place. So I'm trying to build up my presence here on YouTube now, which is why I'm back. I'm trying to get some live streaming done here. And then hopefully at some point I will sort of move my sort of regular live streams completely over here. And just shift a little bit so you can see I'm right at the end here. I'm gonna have to get I'm gonna have to brush up these excess bits, because like I say, I've not got much of these left now. I've not got much of this left. That's not grammatically correct. So all the excess bits I can get back into the box helps until I can make some more. So I've got an old full-size paintbrush here that I use as a sweeping brush. So if you're still there, Moneybrook Junction, what part of the... I'm assuming it's UK by the name. It sounds very much a British railway layout kind of name. Whereabouts in the country are you from? Got a very itchy hand for some reason. Let's come back over here, because this bit of fence now was mistakenly painted brown, and it's really supposed to be a dark grey. So whilst we have the area handy, I'll just give it a coat of silicanum grey, so it's not really black. You're in Shrewsbury. Well, hello Shrewsbury from Yorkshire. Is it cold where you are right now? We're not expecting snow, but it's rather chilly. Because this is a contrast paint, I'm expecting this is going to take a few coats to cover. Had it been on raw white sanded Foamex, this would have sort of coloured straight away, but I've inadvertently painted it with an orange wood colour. That's because I'd misremembered what the fence looked like and thought it was a wooden sort of wood stained colour, not the dark grey of the rest of it. Doesn't matter though. Hello Poland. Greetings. I bet you're cold. I mean, I don't mean you personally. I mean, isn't it supposed to be like quite cold in your neck of the woods at the moment? Yeah, it was. I wasn't paying too much attention. I know the little warning light on the car came on to tell me it was frosty, and at one point I noticed it was 0. But my wife came home not long after and said it was -2 in her car. So yeah, it's quite chilly. I got in the house with no heating on. It was just like being outside. I'm currently sat in my conservatory. This is my workroom in the conservatory. And I've got an electric heater on because otherwise I'd be frozen stupid. Hot chocolate. Oh, love a hot chocolate right now. That sounds really good. Well, thank you for keeping me company. In case you haven't met me before, my name's Lee. I'm a model maker, mostly specialising in making miniatures of people's houses, but I do a lot of landscape work as well. So my YouTube channel it's a fledgling channel. I've only been going properly, even though I've been signed up to YouTube for years. I used to just use it for uploading the occasional sort of video of any kind of railway work I've been doing, just to show people, to share it rather than try and get actual people to watch, you see what I mean. But I've only been actively using the channel as a model maker for just over a month now. So the channel is going to be a mix. Originally it was going to be just house building, but I decided to sort of share some knowledge in the form of making. I do talk a lot. So yeah, it's going to be a mix of sharing tips and also sharing the kind of projects that I work on. Something like this can take up to 100 hours, so it's very difficult to film. Or it is very difficult to film if you're not actually conscious about filming it. I think from now on I'm going to try and make an effort to time-lapse document, or at least document the full thing from start to finish in an edited way. But as you might appreciate, it's going to be quite a laborious task to edit through 100 hours worth of footage. So Lisa's the model maker. What does Lisa make? This is a very, very runny paint, so hence it is going to take several layers to get through it. But I'm going to need an equal fence at this other side when I've done here. So I'll paint that straight onto the white wooden surface rather than rather than go through the same incorrect procedure. Just come to the other side of this here now. I'm going to have to keep a close ear out on my phone because I'm a taxi driver tonight. I've got my son to collect from work, and I've got my wife to go and collect from a night out with some friends. So at some point I'm going to have to be rudely stopped from what I'm doing and go out and pick various people up from where they are. Just give me a second. I need to message somebody. What I would have done if I can remember where I put my laptop. That's a good one, isn't it? I bet it's. Oh, I've left it in the car. That's a strange place to leave a laptop, isn't it? I'll go fetch it in a bit. It's too cold to be going out right now. Good evening, Charlie. How are you doing, fella? You're the track. That's quite a nice thing that you're a pair making models. What I probably should have done, in hindsight, I mean, I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but what I probably should have done was paint the fence before I installed it. But, you know, I was quite anxious to get this up. It would, wouldn't it? Do you know what? I'm actually going to call this off shortly-ish, and yeah, I might switch views when I come back. Sometimes I forget, but yeah, if I'm doing stuff for potential long form saving, then I'll do it landscape. Little snow. And I think there was a guy on earlier from upstate New York that said it was snowing. It's just chilly here. There's no chance of snow here. It's just cold. I looked at the forecast because my friend's up in County Durham, and she was saying it was forecast snow where she is tonight, but I looked at mine and it's just cold and clear. This, at the moment, this fence is made out of Foamex PVC foam. So it's this material here. This is just a scrap piece I use for putting paint on. It's got a very shiny appearance, so to use it you need to sand it off. So I've cut lots of little strips to make this fence. So this is all handmade by making strips of Foamex. In fact, the whole building here is made out of the same material. I've run that through a Cricut electronic cutting machine to mark off the bricks, and then painted it. So this planking on the deck here is the same material, and these not wooden, stone tiles are also the same material. All the furniture inside, or most of the furniture inside, is Foamex. This is plasticard, this little orange storage unit here, but I've made some furniture for the interior, and that's Foamex as well, although it's a thicker version of the same material. So this sofa here is made out of 2mm thick Foamex, carved and sanded to create the illusion of fabric. So I've done a single seater as well, which goes roughly around there, and then there's another sort of leather sofa thing. XPS foam, I'm yet to play with that. I haven't found anywhere that sells it to a reasonable cost. This here is upside down. This here is made out of styrene sheet, which we were just talking about. So that's slightly different way of cutting, but there's a little bookcase out of styrene. This is 150 scale, this one. So in model railway terms, it's O gauge. I've just made this a little bit bigger than model railway sized, just to get a bit of extra detail in, really, because she wanted a full interior making. So that meant going a bit bigger. And then we've got a little picnic table. This was made out of a mixture of Foamex legs and styrene top and seat. And you've got also fitments in the kitchen there. So it needs a bit of touching up yet, but yes, Foamex is my kind of go-to material for making models like this. It's so versatile. See, I need to glue that in place because it's going to keep falling over. Now this is a piece of wall I've got to put back in. Just a little alcove there. The original part of this I've cut off. I was going to rebuild it, but I was going to fully rebuild it, but I don't have enough material left. So I'm going to cover some of it with the new cladding and leave the old section on, but just carve that detail back in. In fact, I might actually just carve all the detail back in because it's actually easier. No, it's on the floor. Rather than up on the wall. So a lot of the time I hand carve stonework and brickwork. And if you've seen the video I've got on making a stone wall, unfortunately I lost the audio for it. So I accidentally deleted the audio track. And I've lost the original footage, so I can't redo it. But that sort of explains how I do stonework, but use a little engineer's scribe. I like evergreen plastic. I've got an awful lot of evergreen plastic strip. It's not cheap though. And that's the thing. I used to follow a guy on the you guys familiar with the RM Web Model Railway Forum? I used to follow a guy on there called Ron, I think. But he was building, he had a villa in Spain, and he was building a kind of 00 replica of a large area of Manchester. But he was building all the sort of viaducts, etc., out of plasticard. He must have spent an absolute fortune on styrene. This was a number of years ago, so I'm not sure if he's still doing it. I'd like to think he is. See, I'm just trying to save myself a little bit of time actually by rescribing. Mostly building in card. Well, it's a great way to learn. I mean, how I started. I started off actually by downloading some of the card kits that you can get, sort of, you know, print your own. But I just wanted to improve the way I made things, or the way things were. I started off, like I say, I started off downloading card kits from the internet, and then I had to go at making my own, sort of by, because I'm a graphic designer by trade, so I tried to make some sort of huge retaining wall pieces by making some photoreal textures, a bit like some of the guys that, you know, you see around these days, like Scale Model Scenery and what's the other guy called? John Whiffen Scale Scenes. You know, all the photoreal textures and then print them out to make walls. But it's great to a certain extent, but then it ends up looking a bit flat. So that's why I ended up scratch building, because I just wanted to get something even more realistic. So I'm entirely self-taught. Everything I've done is just by watching other people or figuring out how to do it myself. Yeah, it's not great when you only need a little bit, is it? I'm not sure if they actually sell it on Amazon, or if they do, it's the right stuff. I was in our, you'll be familiar with B&Q, won't you? I was in our local B&Q store the other day looking at insulation foam. It's not exactly the same thing, but you can only buy it in huge sheets. I did buy a load for a project I've got going at the moment, but I keep stealing it to use it for different things. So my supply for the actual project that I need it for is dwindling on a monthly basis. So I just like to hack in the corners on a wall with the back end of a scalpel. I've seen some sort of war game model makers using XPS foam to make buildings, but it's a slightly bigger scale, so you can carve it easier. But for down for 17600 scale, it's very tricky, because even though it's a nice fine foam, it's still quite coarse for making small bricks. That would have been a good tactic. See, what you really need is you need to know a few builders. You need to know some builder friends who have you know, insulating some walls, because there's always offcuts that they can't use. I know when our next door neighbours were having an extension built, the builders threw away some excess insulation foam, so I went and pinched it out the skip when they weren't looking. Well, had they been there, I'd have asked, but you know, I think skip grading for stuff that's going to be thrown away in the first place is not a bad thing. But yeah, if you know, if you've got any builders in the neighbourhood doing building projects or whatever, just it's a great resource for getting a bit of foam to play with. Yeah, you see, what I've done before with stuff that's too thick is use a very sharp kitchen knife, but it's not ideal, and you can't get a really straight cut. I think a hot wire cutter is a definite necessity if you're working with foam a lot, but if you're only using it now and again, it's a bit of an extravagance. A good long retractable craft blade is quite good for cutting it as well. But again, it's kind of wasteful because you need to use the full length of the blade. And I guess once you've made a cut or two, renders it a bit useless. Yeah, I had a handheld one that I inherited from someone, but it was a battery powered thing and it was a bit naff. Proxon makes some wire cutters, don't they? Oops, that slipped. So the further you go down, the harder it is to actually cut. So I apply pressure, so you need to switch it the other way around. But no, I don't use foam often enough to warrant the justification of having a hot wire cutter. So now I've done all those tedious horizontal bits, I can just kind of carve in now those vertical joints. I'm just emphasizing what's there. The grooves already exist, they're just not deep enough. I mean, when you think about it on this is actually scale incorrect. It's even worse on 176, but if you look at most modern brickwork, there's very little relief in the mortar work. These days the mortar's pretty much flush with the bricks. So that means when you're creating scale models, there's no actual relief, or the relief isn't visible. So that's when using brick papers can be quite an acceptable method. But sometimes it's nice to just put that relief in there, just to give the model some character, even though it might technically be inaccurate in terms of scale. I'm only doing this really because it's a relatively small piece. If I was having to go over the whole model again, I don't think I'd be doing it. I mean, I have made a lot of houses where I've individually carved each and every stone. I don't usually do hand cut bricks because it's too small. The depth between each brick layer is only 1mm at 176. I mean, it's not quite 2 at this scale, it's 1.4 or something like that. It's just a little wider, but it's a little bit easier to work with. There's a bit of a gap there that I'm going to have to cut off, so I'll have to foreshorten this wall a little bit. And that's there because I had to rip it off the original wall section. Now, unlike last time, I'll just touch up some of those little white bits that have happened when I've been carving the recesses in. glue's seized up. Can't hold that properly for some reason. It's too fiddly. Put that in a little while. Now I'm going to make that other part of the fence, I think. I need a piece of suitably sized Foamex for that. So this is the material I use. Turn wheel 9 o'clock. So this is 1mm Foamex, and I'm going to require several strips to cover the area. Need to take that sticker off, obviously. In fact, it might be easier if I just avoid that bit. Go to the other side. It says before trying to do it again. It's wonderful, isn't it, when people put stickers on things and then you can't cut it back off again. Just get a square section again, and we'll just remeasure. It's just easier marking it on the board rather than taking a measurement. So you've just got to take the surface of the Foamex off to give it both a key for painting, and also it adds a little bit of texture. One side's always a bit more satin than the other, but they still both require a sanding down. fairly new board this, and it's already started disintegrating. So now I want to cut myself some planks. I'm just doing it by eye. Some of these might be not necessarily the same width. It's there or thereabouts. The further you get down, the harder it is to keep it clamped square, because there's nothing to rest against anymore. I'll just use this actually now to create, because I really didn't need to do that, did I? I'll just measure off the length of fence I need to create. I just need to cut some verticals. So let's just put that to one side a minute whilst I cut myself some horizontal beams. Contradicting myself there. I meant horizontal beams all along. This Foamex has got an actual little grain to it, and you can actually hear it snapping along the grain sometimes. If you cut it too forcefully, it can curl, so it's like the same as styrene. If you cut into it with a lot of pressure in one stroke, it will just curl. So it's easier to cut it in light strokes, so it doesn't, or it reduces the amount of curl. Now, realistically, I want to use the grid of my cutting mat to help me out here. Just kind of tape that jig in place. She's going to ultimately help me out. A few little bits of fibre left over from static grassing earlier, which is annoying. I love how they all concertina over each other. That's sarcasm, by the way. Which is a little bit frustrating. I bet it's equally frustrating to watch. Hello, Go For It Painting. How are you doing? And just gently tease a little bit of space between each of these panels, and I know I'm going to sneeze or something and send them flying. Well, that didn't work, did it? It moved before I got a chance to stick it in place. The idea is that I'm just going to tape this down, but it's moved, so let's try again. Just twist the camera back around a bit. Good. Greetings, Mark. Nice to put a name to the YouTube handle. Yes, I could cut out spaces. It's going to be quite fiddly, that. I'm just going to do it by eye. But in an ideal world, a spacer jig would help immensely. I'm just going to make it slightly uneven. Adds a little bit of character to it. Try not to glue it to my set square. Yeah, for what I wanted to do, it's worked fine. Yeah, I think that would have been a great idea, is actually putting like a double-sided version of masking tape down to glue them all together. In fact, that might have been what I did to do the other side. You know, literally stuck them to a piece of masking tape. Kind of being a little bit lazy here, but it's done what I wanted it to do. Just use that as like a piece of lint roller to get rid of some of those grass fibres that have ended up stuck to the table. See, that's the thing, is if you're working with static grass, it is extremely static, and Foamex has very highly static property, and so any rogue static grass fibres that you've got around will find their way stuck to it. It'll also stick quite nicely to your fingers. I'm actually surprised nobody's called me to collect them yet. There's time. It's stuck. There we go. It's a slightly rickety fence. Which I'm now going to paint before applying, which is going to be easier than it's going to be easier than try and paint it in situ like I did with the last one. Again, it is going to need a couple of coats because this is quite a thin paint. I just use a hairdryer to speed the process up. Very useful thing, wooden coffee stirrers. I've got, I was actually lucky enough to be given a full box of generic coffee stirrers, which I am working my way through. There was about 1,000 in the box, so it's pretty much a lifetime supply. But they're great for bigger planks. For 1/76 scale fences, they're far too thick. They would represent something like a, I don't know, 4-inch thick panel, maybe. I have used them in the past to create sort of good shed decking, when you don't necessarily need to see the thickness of it. But if you're creating a fence panel, they're too big. Cam.